Hello students, welcome back. Let us continue from where we left off when last we met. This lecture is going to be Signal Transduction Part 4. But before we continue, let us have a little review of what we covered last time in our signal transduction pathway. Okay? During a stressful response, your sympathetic nervous system becomes activated and it produces epinephrine. And specifically, it's going to be your adrenal gland that produces epinephrine. That epinephrine is going to go into circulation. It's going to bind to beta-1 adrenergic receptors in your heart cells. The beta-1 adrenergic receptors are then going to activate this trimeric protein, this trimeric G protein that's bound to GDP. I don't know where it all is. I don't know if I want to try to get all of this now. Well, and then the trimeric G protein is going to come to the activated receptor. Then GDP is going to exchange for GTP. The GTP is going to go and activate adenylyl cyclase, also called adenylate cyclase. The adenylyl cyclase is going to convert ATP into cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP is then going to activate protein kinase A. Protein kinase A is going to phosphorylate calcium channels, open them up, and this is going to flood the cardiocytes or the heart cells with calcium, and that's going to lead to contraction. In order to regulate this response, regulate this system, these G proteins, the alpha subunits, have an intrinsic GTPase activity, their own GTPase activity. And when they've been active long enough, then they'll clip the GTP and convert it into GDP. And this GDP is then going to move. Just GDP is then going to return back to to beta and gamma, and now it's going to wait for epinephrine to bind the receptor again, and the whole process starts all over again. And so that's how you get a sympathetic response to a heart cell. The opposite of a sympathetic response is a parasympathetic response. Very good. And now the chemical of choice, or the neurotransmitter of choice here, is going to be acetylcholine. And so what acetylcholine is going to do, acetylcholine is going to bind to an acetylcholine receptor. Now, there are two types of acetylcholine receptors. Which one is this? There are two types of acetylcholine receptors. Which one is this? This is the muscarinic. It's muscarinic because it's 7-pass. And a 7-pass receptor is also known as a G protein coupled receptor. And so in this situation, you're not going to have the G protein is not going to be G stimulatory, it's going to be G inhibitory. And so you start out with G inhibitory trimeric protein, GDP, then it exchanges for GTP, you lose beta and gamma. Now the trimeric G protein, G alpha inhibitory, is going to now move to adenylyl cyclase and inhibit adenylyl cyclase. Now you get no cyclic AMP, you get no protein kinase A activation, you get no calcium channel opening, and so the cell does not have more calcium, and so you don't increase cardiac activity. And so this is how the parasympathetic nervous system fails to lead to an increase in cardiac activity. Does that make sense? That's where we stopped last. Okay, very good. Now, let's talk about the situation. Let's see, well, how does the heart contract under normal circumstances? How does your heart contract? And so that's what we're going to look at next. And then we'll come back to this and we'll see how this increased calcium level leads to a greater contraction. So everybody see where we're going? Okay, so let's look at the heart itself now. So this is going to be somewhat of a, since many of you are going into medicine, you have to really put physiology with biochemistry or pharmacology. If they don't go together, it's pointless. Having a medical degree doesn't help you. Doesn't help anyone. So let's go here. Okay, I'm going to draw here a heart cell. Well, a heart. It's going to be a really crude drawing of a heart. Okay. You may want to just see how I draw it first. You can say, I don't like the way Dr. Merida did that. Okay. Okay. There's the heart. Okay, it's a very rough drawing of a heart. Okay. This is our heart. This is our heart. And if we wanted to, I'm going to turn my phone off here. It keeps beeping. Let's identify the chambers of the heart. You all should know these. What is this first chamber here? What is that? The right atrium. The right atrium. And this is the left atrium. Here we have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Okay. Now this is the heart. The heart has 4 chambers. Okay. The heart has 4 chambers. You're all a little slow on that. I don't know why. Okay, make sure you look at a physiology book so you'll understand cardiac circulation. You all do understand how? Yes, you all do understand it. Well, let's do this. Let me do one thing. I'm going to have to do this because I can't have anybody lost while I'm explaining this. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw. Just watch what I draw first. I need you to see the big picture. So, okay. So this is going to be the right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Okay. Now coming from your left ventricle, the blood goes to your body, all the parts of your body. Okay. And then it goes to your body tissues. Okay, let's just draw this here. Sometime, yes, bless you. Okay, it goes to your body tissues. And then from your body tissues, then the blood comes back to your right atrium. And now, why did I make that vessel blue over here? There's no oxygen. Where did the oxygen go? It went to the tissues. Very good, very good. Okay. Now, from the right atrium, the blood goes. Forgive me if this is elementary. From the right atrium, the blood goes to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, then this deoxygenated blood goes to, I want to have a different color here. I'm going to make it purple because I just need you to be able to see this. So I'm going to do this. So from the right ventricle, the blood goes here. Okay. Anybody have any idea what these are? Exactly. So from the right ventricle, the blood goes to the lungs. And what does it get from the lungs? It gets oxygen from the lungs. Okay. And then from the lungs, Then the blood goes to the left atrium. And from the left atrium, it goes to the left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle, it goes everywhere else. Okay? And that's circulation. That's circulation. The circulation going to and from the lungs, that's called the pulmonary circuit. This is the pulmonary circuit. Pulmonary. And the blood that's going from the left ventricle back around to the to the tissues and back around to the right atrium, that's called the systemic circuit. Yes. Yeah, that's from the left ventricle to all the body tissues, even the brain, all the body tissues, everything except the lung, then back to the right atrium. All of that's called the systemic circuit. And for those of you who've had many A&P courses in physiology, forgive me for going over this, but this is kind of important. And the one thing you need to understand about the heart is always beating. It's beating all the time. It never gets a rest. It never gets a rest. Never gets a break. And so if there's even a very small problem with your heart, it's got to be magnified greatly because it can't take a break. So any issues with the heart are going to just be magnified. Okay? So the point, the point here is that the heart is a very, very important organ. That's why physicians, scientists study the heart a lot. There's a lot of studies done on the heart. So now that we know this, let's go back to the heart. Okay? Now, a question for you all. What part, now your heart has to be, let's say you have a heart rate of 60 beats per second, 60 beats per minute, excuse me. Let's say that what part of your brain tells your heart to beat every second? How many cranial nerves do you have? How many pairs? Cranial nerves? 12. Which cranial nerve or which spinal nerve is responsible for telling your heart to beat every second? Which nerve tells your heart to beat every second? Which nerve in your body, if you cut, will your heart stop beating? Which nerve is responsible for telling your heart to beat? There is no nerve that tells your heart to beat. There is no nerve. If you took a heart out of a human body, sever everything, it would still beat. It would still beat for a while, but then it would die. But it would beat for a while. Now the question is, what causes the heart to beat? What is the pacemaker of the heart? The SA node, exactly. And so, right around here, okay, let's put it here. We'll just put our SA node right about here. SA. This is our SA node. That's hard to read. I'm going to kind of zoom in on it here so I can. Yes. I'm going to, and I'll spell it out for you.
So, like, if you have a pacemaker, it's because something's wrong with your SA node?
Very good. Now you're understanding. And once we get through this lecture, you understand, well, what can be wrong? What can cause you to need what can cause you to need a pacemaker? And it has to do with calcium. Excellent. Excellent. And so this is the SA node. Oh, I need to tell you what I'm just putting an abbreviation. That's sinoatrial. The sinoatrial node. Now the sinoatrial node has lots. Okay. Well, not that last one. I wouldn't really do the last one, because that's kind of different. It's really not a nerve. It's really an electrical. Did anybody write with pens? Wow. Okay. It's really, you can think about it like this, but there really aren't. Well, just remember, there really aren't nerves that come from the sinoatrial node. There really aren't nerves. It's just an electrical. There's a depolarization. There's a depolarization. So I'm going to get rid of these. There's a your heart cells have these things called intercalated discs. So any depolarization that happens in one cell can be transmitted throughout the heart. That's why the heart beats almost as a unit. And so there's a depolarization that takes place, an electrical activity. And so this electrical activity, you can just put lines here. The electrical activity spread all over the heart instead of nerves. Think of it as electrical activity. And so every second, if your heart rate is 60 beats per minute, every second your sinoatrial node sends out a depolarization current. And that depolarization current goes over the entire atrium. It goes over the entire atrium. And so every second, your atria are going to pump. Every second, your atria are going to pump. And each one of those seconds, you're going to have another node right here. A node between the atrium and the ventricle. Anyone have any idea what we should call it? The node between the atria and the ventricles? The AV node. The AV node. So every second, that AV node is going to get that electrical signal, and then it's going to send its signals out. Now it is connected to nerves. So there's going to be a nerve here. There's going to be a big clump of nerves, a big bundle of nerves right here. And we're going to give that a name. Well, we'll give it a name later. And then it's actually going to send out nerve fibers to all parts of the ventricle. Okay. Yes. Anybody have any idea what AV stands for? Now, it's between this node is between the atria and the ventricles. So if you had to come up with a name for it, what would you call it? the atrioventricular node, the AV node. Does it kind of make sense?
And what did you say it controls? Because the other one controls the pace of your heart.
You're right. The SA node tells your it tells your atria when to contract, and it tells your AV node to send out a signal. Okay, but now something special happens here. When the atria, or when the AV node, when it gets the signal from the SA node, it doesn't send its signal out right away. Because what happens, let's imagine that my right hand here, let's imagine that my right hand is going to be the atria, the two atria. And my left hand are going to be the two ventricles. Okay. So once the SA node sends out its signal, that signal is going to go almost immediately to all over the atria and to the AV node. And so every time a signal is sent out, the atria will contract. Now, if the AV node sent out its signal right away, the heart would just beat like this. Everything would beat at the same time. There needs to be a delay in the AV node, so once the atria contract and push the blood in the ventricles, allow the ventricles to fill, the AV node has a little delay. It waits until the ventricles are filled, and this is what the AV node does, and then it tells the ventricles to contract. Boom, 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 boom. Right, exactly. And so the AV node is responsible for putting a little delay in that signal so that the ventricles can contract after they are filled, after the atria have contracted. Does that rationale make sense? Excellent. And so that's what the AV node does. And there are a few little specialized cardiac tissue. And this little bundle of nerves here, this is called the bundle of His. The ventricle is a special beast, and so it has its own nerves in it. And these nerves, well, let me give you the name of these nerves, or these fibers. Anybody have any idea what they're called? Exactly, Purkinje fibers, or Purkinje fibers. Now the ventricle is structured in a way that its opening is at the top, so those fibers go down and they send their signal so that when the ventricle contracts, it starts at the bottom and that signal goes up. So it's almost like it's pushing the blood out this way. Does that make sense? For your atria, it doesn't matter because the blood is falling down. It doesn't matter how it just needs to squeeze. It doesn't matter. But for the ventricles, because the blood has to go up and out of the for the left ventricle, it has to go up and out of the aorta. It closes from the bottom, and it's those Purkinje fibers that time this to make sure the ventricles close in a certain way. Those Purkinje fibers. Does that rationale make sense to everyone? Excellent. So when your heart beats, the signal first goes to the SA node, and then it goes to the atria and the AV node. Then the AV node sends that signal, waits a while, there's a little delay, it sends the signal to the bundle of His and to the Purkinje fibers, and then your ventricles contract. Okay. Now, you do have nerves that can regulate the SA node, not really tell it what to do, but they can regulate it a little. Okay? Let's see here. Now we can have a nerve ending here that can release norepinephrine. And so if norepinephrine goes to the SA node, what is that going to cause the SA node to do? To speed up or to slow down? To speed up. It's going to cause it to speed up. And that should just make all the sense in the world now. Okay? What if there was a nerve ending that released acetylcholine on the SA node? Then what's going to happen? It's going to slow down. And there's a big nerve that's responsible for that. One of your cranial nerves is responsible for this. And I'm just going to give you its name because it's so important. We're not going to really talk a lot about. This is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve regulates cardiac output. It tells your heart, okay, we need to slow down. We need to slow down. In the same way, there is sympathetic control at the point of the AV, and parasympathetic control at the point of the AV. And just for a regular heart cell, just for your regular heart cells, you can have your regular. Let's just say here's just a normal, non-specialized heart cell in the ventricle. You can also have a nerve that releases, a sympathetic nerve that releases norepinephrine. And so when norepinephrine is released on that ventricular cardiocyte, what is it going to cause that cardiocyte to do? Beat more strongly or beat more weakly? More strongly, exactly. Making sense? Now what we're going to do, now that we see where everything fits, we're going to talk about this situation. We're going to talk about this situation right here. We've already talked about what norepinephrine does to a heart cell, but let's just see what happens. Let's say you have a ventricular cell and it's receiving a signal from the Purkinje fibers to contract. It's being depolarized. Let's see what happens. Everyone see where we're going? You're going to see just a normal. We're actually even not even going to look at the norepinephrine right now. So let me see if I can take that off. We're just going to look at a normal, everyday heart cell here and see how it contracts, how the AV node tells it to contract. So let's go there. Have I lost anyone? Okay. So let us draw ourselves a regular heart cell that's in the ventricle. The first thing that's going to happen is that this heart cell is going to become depolarized. It's going to become depolarized. Under normal circumstances, when it's not depolarized, you have lots of sodium on the outside of the cell, and you have very little sodium on the inside of the cell. That's when a cell is polarized. There's a difference in the two sides. But what's going to happen here? This cell, or those Purkinje fibers, or the AV node is going to tell this cell, okay, you need to depolarize yourself. So we're going to have here a sodium channel is going to open up. And when that sodium channel opens up, then the sodium is going to rush into this cell And now the cell is going to be depolarized. That's the electrical signal I was talking about. Not really a nerve, but an electrical signal. That's step one. Step two. There's going to be a calcium channel in the cell. Now this calcium channel is going to be called a depolarization sensitive calcium channel. Only when it senses that the cell has become depolarized will it open up. And when it opens up, when this calcium sensitive calcium channel opens up, only then will calcium that's outside of the cell, only then will it rush into the cell. So this calcium is going to come into the cell. Okay. This channel here is called a depolarization sensitive calcium channel. A depolarization sensitive. So it's sensitive to depolarization. What ion caused the depolarization? Sodium, exactly. What structure caused the cell to become depolarized? How did the sodium channel know to open up? Who told it to open up? The AV node, exactly. And so here we have a depolarization sensitive calcium channel. Once the cell becomes depolarized, the calcium rushes into the cell. Now that it's in the cell, this calcium, well, I'll tell you the name of it in just a second. It's called a special kind of calcium. There is a structure here inside the cell that has lots of calcium in it. It's just a calcium reservoir. It's a reservoir of lots of calcium. This calcium that came into the cell, it's going to activate this little chamber here, and it's going to cause this little chamber here to release all of its calcium. And so all of this calcium is going to start coming out. And so the red calcium is going to be like it's going to trigger the release of the trapped calcium. And so we call the red calcium, we call it trigger calcium. And we call the calcium that comes out of the cell, we call this, well, out of those little chambers, we call this the calcium spark. Make this a little bigger here. Little review. The AV node tells the cell to depolarize. When it depolarizes, the sodium rushes in. Now the cell is depolarized. This depolarization-sensitive calcium channel then opens up, lets the trigger calcium in. The trigger calcium goes and activates these calcium traps, or these calcium reservoirs, to release the calcium spark. Now let's give a name to this structure that holds the calcium. This structure here is called the sarcoplasmic reticulum. You all should remember this one here from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now we're at the end almost. Okay. And it's this calcium. Okay, we're going to stop there because it's going to get kind of interesting right here. Okay? Any questions? Any questions about what's going on? Okay? I have some questions for you then. What is the name of the cardiac circuit that goes from the right ventricle? The pulmonary circuit. If it goes from the right ventricle, it's the pulmonary circuit. What's the name of the cardiac circuit that goes into the left atrium? The same one. I thought I was going to trick you there. Very good, very good. What is the name of the structure in the heart that is responsible for pacing our heart? The SA node. What does the SA stand for? Sinoatrial node. What is the name of the specialized fibers found that go throughout the ventricles? Purkinje fibers. Okay, very good. Any questions? Have a great day, you all.